So here's why I'm very excited this morning to talk to you about divine masculine. In the spiritual community, there is such a huge emphasis on women-only events. And there is this consensus, and I feel pretty confident saying this because my husband's mentioned it more than once, that this type of connected spirituality, this woo-woo stuff or whatever it is we're up to, is for women only. And I've even had in the past couple years, back when I was actively running like in-person events and women's circles and stuff like that, had some issues with men wanting to take part in these circles, but women not feeling comfortable like with that, right? And we have to honor kind of both sides of that. So I want to speak to that first, because when we talk about patriarchy and we talk about feminism and we talk about how now we're moving into this energy where the divine feminine is rising up, right? We also have to realize that patriarchy does not just affect women, it also affects men. When we have children and we have a girl and a boy, and we teach the girl one thing and the boy one other thing, both of them are affected by those teachings. So we're teaching our boy kids, right, for how many centuries now, to be a certain way, to act a certain way, to be a man, to repress their emotions, repress their feelings. And then we're teaching our women all of the other things on this side. So it's not fair and it's not helpful to continue to keep these things separate, because the healing is together. And I've been seeing a small amount of like men's circles kind of popping up, but it occurs to me that as we move further into December and then kind of move into 2021, this is going to look different for us as well, because no one is escaping the massive upgrades, right? So what's likely going to happen is, and what's probably happening already, is we as people are feeling the shift, and we're just going to have to figure out where that takes us and what it means to connect again together. I personally feel that it is incredibly unhelpful to attack any group of people with the goal of fixing something, because that's fighting energy, and it's coming from a place of lack, and it's coming from a place of anger, and anything coming out of that is going to be built out of those emotions, and that doesn't have it doesn't have love as a base, and it doesn't have lasting structure. So moving forward into new earth energy, what does that look like for how we connect with the divine masculine and how the divine feminine connects with the divine masculine? What does that mean for us, right? Because when back when I first started talking about masculine and feminine, I would get a lot of women that would say, well, I'm not masculine, I'm very, very feminine. And I would say, no, that's well, maybe, but that's not what I mean, because masculine energy and feminine energy are present in everything. We run into issues when we polarize things, when we say one thing is this and it's not that. We are not that. We are made of all of these different elements. Each one of us, whether we are identifying as a female gender or male gender, have masculine and feminine energy in unique balance within us that create our unique signature, right? And I really, I was actually thinking about this. This is gonna be really all over the place today, but we usually get where we wanna go. I was thinking about this last night because Ellen Page came out as, what did she come out as? Was it trans? And now her pronouns are he and they. And James was like, I don't understand what that means. And when we were having this conversation about that, it occurred to me that where we're moving into, gender is not the same as it was before, because we cannot be classified with these terms anymore. Okay? We can't be boxed in and told who and what we are. It's much more fluid. And I think that what's really exciting to me is that we're moving into that energy where people can start to open up and soften to the idea that we are so much more than just, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I only like men, I only like women. Hold on, let me just pull up here because we've got a comment I want to read. Matt says, I totally relate with this from some of my past experiences as well. It's been super healing to be embraced by different groups, both men and women, and all groups. We are all one. Absolutely. Jennifer says, we need both anima and animus. We are on the road away from he, she, and moving to they. Absolutely. Okay, we're on the same page. Okay, so Jennifer's saying that Ellen is now Elliot Page. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. This is probably something we need to talk about like over several different lives. But some of you know, and I'm just gonna kind of go out here with this because it kind of illustrates this point, and then we're moving into Divine Masculine again. Some of you know that last year, was it 2019, I had this huge whoa moment where I was like, oh no, I'm not a straight woman anymore. What do I do? And when I had that awakening, when I had that realization that I might be a gay woman, I had so many conflicting feelings. I didn't want my family to be torn apart, but at the same time, there was this incredible rush of relief inside of me, which was then quickly replaced by sheer heaviness. And I remember I spent 3 days crying because I felt that it was so easy for me to wake up one morning and to say, I don't feel straight anymore, and I can make those choices for myself with very little repercussion as far as my life obviously would change, but I wasn't in any danger. I wasn't going to get kicked out of my home. I wasn't going to be ostracized by my friends. And it just made this feel so much different to me from that perspective, because imagine what it would feel like to be a person, you're in your natural essence, in the way that you want to express your love, and not be able to do that for fear of being killed, ostracized, kicked out of your family, not be able to hold your job. I mean, it's so completely inhuman that it makes me feel excited that we're moving into an energy now where that's no longer going to be a thing. But we have so much baggage over here when it comes to gender roles, when it comes to sexuality. We just have so much, but it all stems from a very similar place, which is seeing each other as other instead of seeing each other as fellow humans of the same energetic place. And so that's what I want to talk about today, because I could talk about one aspect of that for so long. You know what I mean? Like even the sexuality aspect is its own thing, but I really want to try to like rein myself over here to the masculine and feminine, because one of the things that has happened because of patriarchy is we have been trained to not understand each other. Okay? You know that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? That book, when I like hear that title, when I see it, like it pops up every now and again, I get so angry, because I'm like, this is the reason that we perpetuate misunderstanding and miscommunication among the sexes, because we are being taught that we are from different freaking planets. We are not. We are all human people. We should be able to communicate, but it's kind of trained within us from through jokes, stories, commercials, books, that men don't know how to communicate with women and women don't know how to communicate with men. So this creates a huge space, right, for people to profit off of our inability to have a simple freaking conversation with each other and be honest. And this is actually not at all about sexes. This is about us not knowing who we are and not knowing how to speak our own truths and being so afraid of our truth coming out there and being received in a way that we can't control, that we just shut down. But there's no reason in the world why any man can't speak to any woman and be understood. The only reason that happens is because we believe that is a thing. We believe that being a man is so incredibly different from being a woman that we couldn't possibly meet eye to eye. I think about this a lot because in the past 2 years, I've gone through lots of marriage counseling, regular counseling, and just really like working through this kind of stuff pretty much nonstop. And my husband is a Virgo and is very he's very linear, he's very to the point. He's the opposite of me. Okay, so us communicating, it's very easy to imagine that we would not be able to communicate well, but that does not have to do with his gender. That's just how he is as a person. Lots of Virgos are that way, female and male. You know what I mean? So, we're assigning these issues to genders that they don't need to be assigned to. But imagine you move into a conversation with your significant other, okay? Because you're having an issue. And the first thing that you say to them is, you're not gonna understand this. Or I know you're not gonna understand this, but here's what I have to say. You're already setting up the stage. You're already manifesting a conversation where that person is not going to understand you. And that person hearing you say that is going to have, probably one of many reactions, but a few of those reactions could be, okay, then I'm just going to shut down and not listen to you. Or they might get angry and say, oh, you think I'm such an idiot that I can't understand you? Either way, the energy before you even start this conversation is one of contention and division. Because you are automatically saying to that person, I know you're not going to understand what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, right? Then, see, are you following me? I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. But then you've said that and you start talking, right? So you're telling them something that they've done that has upset you or whatever the situation is. There's a part of you that wants your person to intuitively know what it is they did wrong and then do something about it, right? But you don't want to tell them what it is, because if you tell them what it is, then it doesn't count. So you have this conversation where you attack them in some way, but you give them no information as to how they can fix it, because you want them to listen to how you've been feeling and then intuitively figure out what it is they should do. This is the model of how I have done all relationships, basically, for most of my life, because it's what I saw too. It's what I saw growing up. It's what I learned, that's how a woman expresses her feelings to a man who's never going to understand her. But somehow I want to magically have this person understand me without clearly explaining what it is I want, right? So these are issues in communication that stem from this separation. And moving into New Earth energy, we now have this opportunity to use this amazing bolstering energy to knock that off. But it starts with each one of us changing our small behaviors, removing passive aggression from our vocabulary, from the way that we interact with each other, from knowing who we are. If you know who you are, if you know what you want, you don't really have those conversations because they're a waste of time to you, right? It's not loving and it's not kind. And even with friendships, platonic friendships, you may find yourself doing this where you're like, I want you to intuitively understand, all of these different things. Or, and this has happened to me too, with my girlfriends, a lot of them do intuitively understand me. And then I go to my romantic relationship and I'm like, why don't you understand me if my friends can understand me? Well, guess what? I spend probably, 70% of my day communicating to my close friends, communicating my every thought and feeling, processing emotions, processing their feelings and emotions, and all the rest. Of course, they have more intuitive insight into what I need and what I want. I'm constantly telling them, right? Even to the point where I'm telling them, maybe issues in relationships, right? Saying that this is what is not being given to me and this is what I do want and da 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 da. I'm having conversations with my friends that I should be having with the person I'm having the issue with. And if we start opening up conversation that way, start treating our relationships with that same kind of intimacy and respect, the intuitive aspect is going to be there because you're talking to each other and interfacing. So, so that's something I think about a lot. But back to the energies of masculine and feminine, right? Quarantine has really, for a lot of us, shown a light on a lot of the roles that we assign different genders, right? Because when quarantine happened, we're home. So that means if you have been the person, whoever you are, if you've been the person who has been doing the lion's share of the stuff at home, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, whatever it is, and the other person has been physically away working or whatever your arrangement is, everything was changed. So that means we had to kind of figure out what that means. For me, it was really interesting because it turns out that even though I was a stay-at-home mom for my kids' entire lives, so like the past decade, I've been home with them. That's not what does it for me. And I'm just going to say that because I felt really guilty about this over the years, but it's not my jam. I love my kids and I love interacting with them and hanging out with them and all the things, but it is not what brings me the most joy to be home and doing the things. That's just not me. However, it turns out that my husband actually really does enjoy all of those things, but has never had the opportunity to be able to step into that role because he's the man. He has to be out there making the money, and that's what he has to do. So with this switch, he's found himself, well, because I'm like, yeah, go do it, but he is so much better, honestly, at running this household than I could ever be. Because number one, he's a Virgo, and number two, it's not what I want to do. So whereas him like running this house and making sure it continues to flow and the kids have everything they need and garbage is taken out and all that stuff, him being more in charge of that has facilitated a different kind of relationship between us because it feels more balanced, because I'm doing what I'm really good at and he's doing what he's really good at, and it has nothing to do with gender. Because I've been lucky because my husband has always been very very involved with the kids, even when they were babies. So he always changed diapers. He always helped me out. Like I never had any issues with that. But I know that some men feel like that's not their role. Like they shouldn't be taking care of children. And that, again, is not their fault. This is what we train our men to be, right? Be a man, be a man. So all we have to do is to keep going along this path. Keep teasing out these things. Keep shifting the roles. Keep looking at people as actual people and seeing the different facets of their personality and what they gravitate towards, and not shove them into different directions just based upon their gender. I have had to say, because we have two boys, and if they're crying or something, James has just like off the cuff just been like, stop, don't be a crybaby, don't be a sissy or something like that. And I had to be like, whoa, like, whoa, we don't say that. Crying is not a sissy thing to do. Crying is a natural human response. You need to cry. Every time somebody tells you when you're a child that you shouldn't cry, you are getting emotionally damaged and stunted, because crying is a natural response. And, you know, as a child, I didn't cry really at all either, but I don't know why I didn't do that, but I was repressing. And so as I grew up, learning to actually cry was huge for me, and not to feel shame about it. And there is no shame in crying. There is no shame in crying, but there is a stigma for men to cry. When a man cries, like, let's be honest, ladies, be honest, because I have had this conversation with plenty of friends over the years. If your man breaks down in tears, what do you automatically feel inside of you, right? Is it your true honest response? Perhaps not, but it's a programmed response. It's an uncomfortable feeling, like, ooh, I don't know I can't handle this. Why is he crying? That's not a manly thing to do. But guess what? When we cry, we make our men uncomfortable too. When people express uncomfortable emotions, it doesn't matter what gender you are. None of us are really great at knowing what to do. We're like, they're crying. That's what we need to address, not the gender issues. Because when a person cries, we should be teaching our children from the get how to handle that, how to hold space for grief and sadness and fear and anxiety, instead of constantly trying to shape it into a different way. Instead of constantly trying to say, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry that I have these emotions, or worse, have the emotions and as a man not be able to express them, so shove it deep down inside of you until it festers and becomes rage or anger, right? So I'm just gonna pause here and look at these comments. Okay, so Matt says, as a stay-at-home dad, I really enjoy you opening up about this, breaking the norm and finding what works for you. I love that, Matt. Randy says, I need to cry more, 100%. Rose says, even women apologize for crying so much. I never apologize for crying anymore. It's my feelings and they are happening. Well, and here's the thing. Even within in the female structure of it, crying is seen as weakness. Showing emotion is seen as weakness, right? So as we look at these things, I like to look at anything that has been historically perceived as weakness or less than and examine it, because it's usually the superpower that they're trying to hide from us, right? Anything that society says is like, that's not good, that's not good. Crying is bad, emotions are bad. Well, why? Why would that be so if it didn't lead to something so powerful that it opens you up to entirely new experiences? Being able to safely express your emotions and have that space held for you is the most precious of gifts. But it is something that we need to learn, because I'm venturing to say that really not one of us learned how to hold space for uncomfortable emotions as a child, because that's not how most children are raised. We're like, suck it up, kid. This is life. Life is hard. Have you heard that one? Life is hard. What do we expect life to be if we tell our children as their formative growing up years that life is hard? What a horrible thing to say. What a terrible program to perpetuate. Life is hard. Toughen up. Don't be a sissy. And then on the flip side, you grow up and you get into a relationship and your significant other is like, you need to share your emotions with me. You need to open up. And you're like, I do, because my entire life I've been told I don't need to do that. So it's a pickle. It's a pickle. Claudia says, I had to learn how to cry. I was raised that was pointless and showed weakness. Yeah, 100%. Even now, I'm better at it now. I cry all the time. But like when I was a teenager, I would sit like in my family room with my family, and if we were watching something and I would feel emotions start to come up, I would just clench, because I didn't want anyone to see me cry. And I realized as I'm saying it, it's because my mom was always so super emotional, and my dad was always saying, you know, don't be like your mom, don't be like your mom. And so I was raised to see that overexpression of emotion as a negative trait, right? We can always trace things back and it's like, oh great, that's a nugget. Oh gosh, Kristen. Well, and that is, you know, Kristen, that is like a literal physical expression of what we're talking about and what society has done. You know, it's, we need to learn now how to unlearn all of our traumas. But here's the good news. In New Earth Energy, we don't do things the same way that we used to. So that means we can use this rising frequency to release the heaviness, to release all of those things. And when we do that, when we're able to kind of say, to see the thing and then give it love, then we can move into new energy and start doing new things. We can start new actions, small actions even. Like we said for the full moon call, right? We released things and now there's space. Don't fill the space, let it be empty. Sit in the squirm. Don't put something in there just to put something in there. Now is the time to retrain our synapses, retrain our instinctual ways of being, because we want that. We want the new programs. We want the open, vulnerable, the raw. But this isn't easy stuff. This is really big stuff. Even if you are cognizant of it and you can talk about it all day long, when you're in that space where you are either the person who is in the presence of somebody who is having an emotional outpour, or you're the one who's having it, it's uncomfortable. And it only gets better as our communication gets better and as we start to see each other as fellow humans and stop classifying each other as different things. He's a man, so he needs to be this way. She's a woman, so she needs to be that way. And all of the shades in between. Once we start releasing all of those programs, we can actually just kind of be here and observe what the person in front of us actually is. And that is what it feels like to be seen, to be in the presence of somebody who is not putting labels on you as you're speaking, but instead is sitting there and actively receiving your energy and actively understanding or reaching a place of understanding with you. And that takes time. It takes patience on both sides, but all it needs to start with is a willingness to do that. So I would say to you guys, try it out. Try to have a conversation with somebody today without thinking in your brain who they are, what they're going to do, or judging anything they're saying. Just actually listen. Let them tell you who they are, because people will. If you give them the space, people will 100% tell you who they are, what they want, all those things. It's in their mannerisms. It's in the word choice. It's in the way they look at you. These are all things that we need to slow down and start receiving about each other. Because even if as I say this, when you're in a romantic relationship with somebody, especially any intimate relationships, it's so easy to automatically assume that you understand, all of the things about that person because you've been with them a certain amount of time. But a lot of times we change, right? So if you're allowed to change and evolve and grow all the time, isn't your partner allowed to do that too? And if they are doing that, don't you feel that it is more loving to just show up in the present moment and see who's there and understand that person? And then if you don't understand, to maybe ask a clarifying question, right? If we start seeing each other this way, if we start being curious instead of judgmental, if we start asking, why is that, instead of how could you do that to me, it changes everything because we're coming from an energy and anchoring in our hearts. So I think I'm going to wrap up with that because that feels like the point of all of this. We can continue fighting about all of the differences and all of the inequalities and all of the bad things that have happened and the hurtful things that have been said. We can spend another decade doing that. We can spend another 100 years doing that. Or we can start speaking our truth and anchor from a place of love instead. We can move throughout our day and slow the hell down. And when we speak to somebody, we can just listen and ask them questions and understand, or try to understand, who they are and what their energy is like, what colors are surrounding them. Really see the people, because when you do that, it's really difficult to be incredibly irritated with anybody or to feel separated from them. So that is my challenge to you for today. We'll talk more about this. This feels like a good discussion. Thanks for joining. I was gonna pull cards, but I'm not gonna do that today. Jen and I will probably be on here talking later. So if you wanna join us around 5 p.m., we'll be here with some wine, and Lord knows what we're gonna say. Maybe Jackie will join us. I'm sending you guys lots of love for this Wednesday. If this has been an interesting conversation for you, feel free to send me a message, let me know, or share this video. I have a lot more to say on these things, and I already have one mini activation done, just waiting for meditations, but I've got several more in the pipeline that deal with self-love, body image, self-talk, and reactivation actually has a whole section that talks about how you speak to yourself and healing that relationship with yourself and your emotions. So I have more of this coming down the pipeline to kind of help us to integrate to new earth energy, right? Because that's what we're doing. And let it go. Letting it go. So I'm sending you guys so much peace and love on this Wednesday, and love you guys so much. Have an amazing day, and I will see you again live on Friday morning. And if you catch us later this evening, grab a glass of wine. It's Wednesday after all. Mwah. Love you guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and follow.